Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another beautiful day. Today we are going to begin our exploration of food webs. I love life sciences just because, well, I love animals and the interactions between them, their connections, their comparisons. I find the science of it all to be very fun. So with food webs, and just for a little tidbit, a lesson on food webs was actually the first lesson I ever taught when I was in college. So again, I really like this topic. So make sure before you continue with this video that you have the food webs notes pages. You're going to complete the pages, and then if you notice, if you fold it in half, there is a blank side that will allow you to glue that into your science notebook so that you can keep this safely secured in your science notebook. The notes will be taken directly from this PowerPoint. The notes do go in order, so you'll start on the side with the blank section and the section on the right, and then once you finish that portion, you'll flip it to the other side, and the notes will continue from there. If you have any questions about this, go ahead and pause this video for just a second and raise your hand and come ask me real quick. All right, so let's continue. Organisms. Organisms are living things, and remember that when we talked about living things in our lesson last week, that living things grow, they consume, they need energy to develop, to move, to live. They reproduce, so they create other organisms like themselves. They adapt to their environment, all of that. So we're going to first start with producers and consumers. And again, we talked about this last week. Producers create their own energy. Usually they do so using the sun, water, nutrients, and oxygen. Now, consumers eat to get their energy. They eat other living things. Just to review some vocabulary, producer is an organism that creates its own energy. Most of the time when you think of producers, you think of plants. Consumers are an organism that must eat to get energy. You or I are consumers. Dogs, giraffes, monkeys, there are millions of types of animals, but if something has to eat in order to get energy, they are a consumer. And remember the difference, I'm going to go back a slide, is that a producer creates its own energy. Okay, most of the time, like plants, they use chlorophyll, which is inside their leaves. They collect sunlight, their roots get nutrients and water from the ground, and they use chemical processes inside themselves to create their energy. But a consumer has to eat something else outside of their body in order to get energy. All right, now there are three types of consumers. And remember, if we look at the top, consumers, they have to eat in order to get their energy. So the first type is herbivores. They eat plants only. Certain types of herbivores would be cows. Certain types of birds are herbivores. You also have, let me see, I'm trying to think of one more example off the top of my head real quick, and my brain is just blanking. It's one of those mornings. But any animal that only eats plants is an herbivore. And then on the opposite end of this spectrum, so you have the herbivores, and then its antonym is going to be a carnivore. Its opposite is a carnivore because they only eat animals. They only eat meat. Now, the one big difference that you can tell between an herbivore and a carnivore if you're looking at them, herbivores have a type of teeth that are more like our molars, so the teeth at the back of your mouth. They're more flat, they are wider, because they are meant to help grind up the plant material. But carnivores, if you think like lions or dogs, they have sharper teeth, and these sharper teeth are meant to rip at meat as they eat it. Humans, since we are omnivores, we eat both, we actually have the molars at the back of our mouths that are meant to do the grinding, and then you also have your, what I call the canines, which are the sharper teeth up front, that are meant to grab and rip and shred. And then you have omnivores. You and I are omnivores. We eat plants and animals. And yes, I understand some of you are going to raise your hand and say, but Ms. Pike, some people are vegan or vegetarian. Yes, I understand. That is their choice. We are not going to debate it. But that is a choice. Humans naturally are omnivores. We need plants and animals in order to survive. And vegans and vegetarians, they get the protein that they would get from eating meat in other ways. But we are omnivores. Technically, most animals are more omnivores than strictly herbivores or carnivores. So just remember, herbivores, herb, H-E-R-B, herb is a plant, so herbivores eat plants only. Carnivores, this is going to sound kind of crazy, but I remember it because I think of carne asada, I think is how it's pronounced. In carne asada, it has meat in it. So carne, I think of meat that way. And then omnivores eat both. All right, so we've already gone over this, but just to review that an herbivore eats plants only. Omnivores eat plants and animals. Carnivores eat animals only. Now, decomposers is the third type of, goodness, my brain is frying today. Producers, consumers, and then decomposers. So decomposers break down dead organisms and return the nutrients to the soil. Their job is to literally take dead and decaying material, plants, animals, anything that's in the soil that can be broken down, and decompose it, break it down, return it to its base state, and return those nutrients to the soil. And in doing so, they then are giving food back to the plants, which the plants then use that energy in conjunction with sunlight and water and oxygen to grow, which then gives energy to the consumers that eat producers, and then those consumers, depending on if they are potentially prey, can then give their energy to an omnivore or a carnivore if that omnivore or carnivore eats them to get the energy from them. And then we have scavengers. Scavengers eat animals that are already dead. So they, vultures are scavengers. They look for animals that have been killed. Crabs are scavengers. So anything that only eats animals that are already dead is a scavenger. Now let's take a look at this food chain that I was referencing, that transfer of energy. Now these arrows represent the transfer of energy. All food chains begin with the sun for their energy source, all of them. So just to make sure that you fully understand this, Let's see here. Let's go with that red. So all energy starts with the sun. Say all energy starts with the sun. Okay. Producers, consumers, they all pardon me. The original source of their energy all starts with the sun, because producers require sunlight. So sunlight, all that light energy is then transferred to the plant. The plant then uses that energy to grow, and the consumer then eats, whether it's the acorn, which is the fruit, or the leaves or the seeds, and that energy is transferred to the consumer from the plant, because the consumer is eating it, and when they eat it, they take in that energy. And just like I said before, energy for a food chain begins with the sun. Always. All food chain, food web energy begins with the sun. Always. Plants get energy from the sun. The oak tree that made the acorn is a producer. The squirrel gets energy from the acorn. The squirrel is a consumer. And in this case, I would actually have to check. I'm pretty sure squirrels are herbivores. But depending on the species of squirrel, that may be different. I may have to research that. Now we have an ocean food chain that shows 1, 2, 3, 4 organisms. And we have the arrows which show the transfer of energy. So the algae is transferring energy to the krill is giving energy to the penguin's giving energy to the whale. So if we think about this, let me get my handy little pen out again. If you think about this, the algae is a producer. The krill is a consumer because it eats the algae. The penguin is also a consumer because it eats the krill. The whale is also a consumer because it eats the penguin. Now in this case, the krill is a herbivore because they eat algae. Algae is a type of plant. And then the penguin is a carnivore, so they're a consumer carnivore because they eat the krill. And then the whale is also a carnivore because they eat the penguin. And that transfer of energy follows along those arrows. All right, I want you to take a look at these 2 ocean food chains. And I want you to think about what you see, what transfer of energy, what types of organisms are they? Are they producers, consumers, decomposers? Are they herbivores? Are they carnivores? Are they omnivores? Are they prey or are they a predator? If they are prey, then they are hunted. If they are a predator, then they hunt other creatures. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to think about that. So in this case, we've already gone over our first ocean food chain, and now we have plankton to fish to penguins to leopard seals. Now, depending on the type of plankton most of the time are producers. Oh, whoops, forgot to turn on my pen. Plankton are producers. They use sunlight to grow. But then we have fish that consume the plankton, penguins that consume the fish, leopard seals that consume the penguins. And once again, our producers are eaten by an herbivore, but depending on the type of fish, they could also be carnivores, because certain types of fish will eat plants and animals depending on what they are. Plankton technically are living things, so in this case they would be a carnivore, but some fish do live on plant material. Our penguin is a carnivore, and our leopard seal is a carnivore. Now in this case, our fish is a predator to plankton, but they are prey to the penguin. Our penguin is a predator for fish, but they are prey to a leopard seal. So animals can be both. All right. So I want you to think about what connections you see here, because we're going to connect these two in food webs here in just a minute. Food webs. When you combine food chains, you can create a food web. You have to be careful to make sure that the flow of energy is accurate. Now, take a look and see what you think of this, because this is taking those two food chains, and remember, a food chain is just a single flow of energy, but a food web has multiple flows of energy. And if we notice here, plankton give energy to the krill and to the fish. Krill give energy to penguins and whales. Penguins get energy from give energy to whales and leopard seals. And so the whale in this instance actually has 3 different sources of energy, and the penguin has 2 sources of energy that go to it. What would happen if plankton were eliminated from this food web? If you said that fish would lose their food source and krill would rely solely on algae, you'd be correct. So if we then lose this, fish no longer have an energy source, which means this energy source is not going to happen, so fish are going to die off, which means the transfer of energy to penguins isn't going to happen, which means that penguins now only have 1 source of energy. But this is also going to be hindered because with the plankton no longer giving energy to the krill are going to rely more on algae. So the population of algae is going to be decreased, which means the level of energy to the krill is going to be decreased. The number of krill are going to decrease, which means that the whales are going to have a decrease in one of their forms of energy, and then the krill, not being as plentiful, will decrease the energy to the penguins. So it's a domino effect. You do one thing, and it's going to affect everything in this web. What would happen if krill were eliminated from this food web? If you said that algae would become more plentiful and that penguins would lose 1 food source, you are correct. So there would be a lot more algae. There would probably be more plankton because plankton are no longer going to be eaten by krill. Whales are also going to lose a food source, and penguins are going to lose a food source. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I appreciate it. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know, and I look forward to seeing you all next time. Bye.